a two-way street, and it's been a two-way street, much more so, and now it's really been a two-way street.
Large protests in Greenland.
President Trump's push to take over Greenland.
What if I told you the US already controls parts of the Greenland and has for over 70 years? Not symbolically, not diplomatically, physically. Just 1.5 thousand kilometers from the North Pole, the US operates Pituffik Space Base, a key missile warning and space tracking hub. From here, American radar can detect intercontinental missiles minutes after launch. That alone is why Greenland has never been seen as icy island. And yes, before someone calls it just ice, let me adjust my glasses, because this ice comes with radar systems pointed at the sky and few more gummies. So when Donald Trump talks about Greenland today, this isn't random or impulsive. It's a return to a strategy born in the World War II and the Cold War, when Greenland was seen as the ultimate shield between North America, Europe and the Arctic. But now everything is changing. The ice is melting. New shipping routes are opening. Critical minerals and rival powers are moving north. Suddenly Greenland sits at the center of missiles, minerals, space and global trade. And NATO allies are quietly nervous. And the real reason behind this obsession? It goes far beyond Trump. So what do you think? If Greenland isn't for sale, why does Washington behave like it already owns the future there? Share your thoughts below. And before we continue, hit that like button, subscribe and share this video, because what comes next explains why stopping this may already be impossible. Greenland's real power isn't what's on the ground. It's where the island sits on the map. Placed between North America, Europe and the Arctic, Greenland occupies one of the most strategic positions on the planet. Any missile traveling between Eurasia and the US must pass over or near the Arctic, and Greenland sits directly beneath the pass.
That's why early warning systems depend on this exact location. From Pituffik Space Base, the northernmost US military installation, American radar can detect ballistic missile launches within minutes, giving Washington crucial reaction time in a world where seconds matter. No satellite, no naval fleet, no European base can fully replace that advantage. During the Cold War, this logic shaped American defense planning. Today, it's back, but with higher stakes. Space surveillance, missile defense, and Arctic monitoring now overlap. Pituffik tracks not only missiles but also satellites, space debris, and emerging hypersonic threats, making it central to modern warfare. As Arctic ice melts, new air and sea routes are opening, turning Greenland into a gateway between continents.
Control here isn't about borders or population. Greenland has just 56,000 people. It's about dominance over the sky, space and Arctic access. Cold War geography never disappeared. It just waited. The Arctic is no longer a frozen buffer. It's opening fast. Since 1980, Arctic sea ice has shrunk by more than 40%. That's transforming global trade.
Routes like the Northern Sea Route can cut shipping time between Asia and Europe by up to 40% compared to the Suez Canal. Shorter routes mean cheaper transport and new choke points no one fully controls yet. That's why major powers are rushing in. Russia now operates dozens of Arctic military bases, icebreakers, and radar stations, treating the region as a core security zone. China, despite being thousands of kilometers away, openly calls itself a near-Arctic state, sending icebreakers north and investing in polar trade routes and resources. For Washington, this changes everything as Greenland sits right next to these emerging corridors. Control the access points, and you shape the flow of trade, data, and power.
That's why the US believes waiting is no longer an option. But while security fears are real, they are still not the whole story. Greenland isn't just ice and rock, it's one of the most resource-rich territories on Earth.
According to geological surveys, the island contains 25 of the 34 critical raw materials essential for modern technology. We're talking about rare earth elements, lithium, graphite, niobium, the invisible backbone of electric vehicles, precision missiles, satellites, renewable energy systems, and artificial intelligence. Here's the problem for Washington. The US still relies heavily on China, which dominates global rare earth processing and supply chains. That dependency has become a national security vulnerability. In a world where technology decides power, access to these materials matters as much as access to oil once did. Trump publicly insists Greenland isn't about minerals. But experts, policymakers, and defense planners aren't convinced. As ice retreats, previously inaccessible deposits are becoming easier and cheaper to reach. That changes the long-term equation.
And here is the real tension. Control doesn't mean digging tomorrow. It means deciding who gets access and who doesn't. Greenland isn't just a potential mine. It's a strategic gatekeeper in the global race for critical elements. Greenland has exposed a nightmare scenario NATO has never designed to handle. Pressure coming from its own leading power. What sounded like dystopian fiction from the 1984 doesn't seem so fictional anymore, right?
Denmark controls Greenland, and Denmark is a NATO member, which means any attempt to force a change in Greenland's status instantly turns an internal alliance issue into a geopolitical crisis. That's why Trump's tariff threats against European allies sent shockwaves through Brussels. At one point, the US openly discussed 10% to 25% tariffs on EU economies unless Denmark complied. European leaders called it coercion. Some warned it could spiral into a full-scale US-EU trade confrontation. Behind closed doors, the fear runs deeper. NATO is built on the idea that threats come from the outside. But what happens when pressure comes from within? Article 5 assumes unity. Not bargaining, not economic pressure, and not strategic arm twisting.
That's why Greenland isn't just a territorial dispute, it's a stress test for Western alliance itself. Despite Trump's bold rhetoric, using military force to seize Greenland is virtually unthinkable, and here is why.
Politically, it would trigger a global outcry. Strategically, it could fracture NATO and damage US credibility worldwide. The American approach is far subtler. Legally, there are options that don't require outright ownership. The US could expand existing bases, negotiate special territorial agreements like Britain's sovereign bases in Cyprus, or leverage defense pacts to gain near-total operational control. In other words, Washington could dominate Greenland without buying it. But here's the twist. Greenland itself is the ultimate gatekeeper. Polls show an overwhelming majority of Greenlanders reject becoming part of the US, and their leaders repeatedly affirm sovereignty. "We don't want to be Danish, we don't want to be American," says Prime Minister Mette Egede.
So while Denmark could theoretically negotiate, the reality is clear. If Washington pushed too far, it could spark trade wars, market turmoils, of course weakening trust in the dollar's dominance. It will also undermine America's global economic leadership. Greenland is the ultimate insurance policy for the 21st century, and yet Trump treats it like a shopping list. Sitting at the crossroads of the Arctic, North America and Europe, it holds 25 of the 34 critical minerals powering EVs, satellites, even AI. Pituffik Space Base alone tracks intercontinental missiles across thousands of kilometers. And as Arctic ice melts, shipping lanes could cut up to 40% of the distance between Europe and Asia, rivaling the Suez Canal. Russia has militarized its Arctic frontier. China calls itself a polar power. And yet Trump's public statements make it sound like Greenland is up for sale. This isn't just about headlines. It's about influence, strategic choke points, and rare minerals. The stakes are real. The joking about Greenland could make the US lose its edge in the global power games. So, do you think Trump's antics are helping or risking America's grip on the Arctic? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe and share this video so you don't miss our upcoming videos. The next one's already brewing. Stay tuned.